back end, but we can join it. So.
All right.
But when you download it, it'll still have this pre-recorded stuff.
Yeah, it's already live. I'm just trying to make sure no other settings I need to make on here.
Hey, it's live. Heard myself.
Yes, sir.
I don't think I have any. Well, actually, let me go ask them if they have any things, just so somebody doesn't have to do it.
We should be starting in less than 5 minutes. They just came out a few minutes ago and gave us a 5-minute countdown, so it should be just any minute now.
Ladies and gentlemen, we're back. Who's excited to hear more about Bitcoin mining? About Bitcoin energy? About the thing that powers the hardest money that's ever existed? This is a spot for it. You've got Genesis Stage, you've got Nakamoto, but this is where things actually happen. Bitcoin mining, this is what makes the network happen. And we've got 5 guys that are going to come up here and they're going to share some of their thoughts on the Bitcoin mining industry. Open source mining versus closed source mining. What are the trade-offs? What are the benefits? I'm very happy to have these guys. I got to talk to them personally backstage and also in the months leading up. They're going to have a wonderful conversation. There's a little Twitter beef that's been happening and we're hoping that comes out on stage. We'll see. We're trying to encourage it. If you see a fist fight break out, jump on stage. Jump in, do what you can. First up, Mr. Alex Disberger. Alex. Yeah. He's coming on like a rock star. Alex, oh sorry, it's Dishinger. I said Disberger, I apologize. I knew a guy. Next up, we have Geo Galt. Rock star, bringing his own backpack. When I talked to this guy, he was in his car moving across Europe. My man. Next up, Mr. Juan Clue. Good, sir. All right. Marshall Long. He's skipping, is what he's doing. And last but not least, Mr. Avril Shukla. Gentlemen, come on. Let's do this. Have a wonderful conversation. Keep all the hits above the belt. Don't hit the face, man. It's the money maker.
I was promised no punches would be thrown, but my name is Alex, and I've been working in the mining industry since 2021, selling mining hardware. I work with a company called Mega Miner now, and I'm really excited about this conversation. Bitcoin mining hardware is fascinating, and it's a very nuanced topic, so looking forward to getting into this. But yeah, guys, if you could all go down the line, introduce yourselves, talk about what you do in the mining space. Well,
sorry for that.
yeah, we'll start with you, Joe, and go down the line.
Okay, yeah, I'm Joe, cybersecurity engineer, working as head of mining OS and MDK for Tether. It's been a couple of years with Tether. I founded like a student association inside the EU Polytechnic of Turin, focused on Bitcoin education, research and development. And then I started studying Bitcoin mining and joined Tether. So super excited for this panel, thank you.
All right, hey, I'm One Clue. I'm the lead software developer of the BitX project, an open source small home miner. I'm in this for over 3 years now, and I'm really excited to talk about open and closed source here.
Hi, I am Averil, Bitcoiner class of 2013, mining Bitcoin since 2015. Founded AlterTech 4 years ago. We sell hardware. We are authorized Canaan distributors. We've worked with OSMU quite a bit in the past.
Marshall Long, I've been mining since 2010. I'm currently founder of a company called PlepSource. We sell mini miners. The guys who actually run PlepSource are here, not me. So they kind of just let me do whatever I want, and I'm a master Twitter troll. Yeah, that's me.
Great. Starting off, One Clue, you're the representative on this panel of the open source side of things. What are the issues that you're trying to solve and that you see in just the full mining stack, and why is open source important?
So I think one of the most important things that we do have about Bitcoin mining, or Bitcoin in general, is that there's a fundamental issue with how Bitcoin has been operated these days. Bitcoin is the more or less only solution that most of us do see. That's the reason why we have all of these conferences, and we do believe that there needs to be some sort of an extent where we have our own control over the things that we own, especially about the money. The problem that is in this industry is that mining itself is over 10 years not really open to the public, not really understandable, because these devices are not really belonging to you. You cannot really go into them or like try to understand how they do work, and you cannot really change them or even trust what they're doing. I mean, one of the biggest examples for that was Antbleed that happened a couple of years ago, where just by reverse engineering it was figured out that in devices are backdoors built into them that allow you, or the manufacturer, to do whatever they want, shut down your mining equipment. That is quite a big thing, especially when you think about you're running a megawatt industry and you don't want to have someone else press the red button on you. So that primarily is one of the biggest reasons for me why I believe open source needs to come back. Especially, I don't like having the audacity to go out there and tell the people that Bitcoin is the saving factor for the world, yet 1/3 of it is just closed down.
Cool. Joe, Tether's one of the biggest miners in the world. How do you face these concerns of hardware potentially being backdoored, management software, things like that, prevent outside forces from either gaining information you might not want to share, or even influencing your mining operation remotely?
Yeah, I mean, nobody wants a backdoor inside this miner, even if it's a small one. So I think it's not a problem for Tether as a company, but it's a problem for Bitcoin. So I think that having clear in mind that this technology can save the world in so many ways, it's important to understand that it's something dangerous for the network. So we know that, and we are just trying to build our own technology, especially when it comes to management tools. We have just announced this new MDK as a mining development kit, basically commoditized software infrastructure to operate and maintain your mining sites. So basically an integration layer where you can operate every single device you have on site and abstract it as it was like a generic device, and you can connect AI agents or whatever you want to this specific engine, to this specific integration layer, and operate whatever you want. So in terms of backdoor, I mean, we don't know if there are backdoor out there, but the only thing we can do is just build sovereign technology to enable us and everybody else to try to avoid these bad consequences.
Very cool. You know, Avril, you sell to a lot of small miners who don't typically have the ability to build their own software and tools, and might not be sophisticated enough to really understand deeply what the hardware is doing. You know, in home applications, you know, this hardware is coming from China. Is this something that, you know, concerns you, or is a part of the education process with your customers, or even a discussion topic in general? Potentials of, you know, just issues with hardware in general.
I don't think this is, I think for our customers, the most important thing is getting highest efficiency hash rate at the lowest dollar per terahash. And you know, if it's for a home application, it has to be quiet, it has to have wireless. But I think open source hardware really is a misnomer or a marketing term. The correct term is open hardware, not open source hardware. So BitAxe license is a CERN OHL, CERN open hardware license, not an open source hardware license. And I think the distinction is really important because open source comes from open source code, which is a software term. Hardware is not made with source code, it's made with components. And applying this into hardware, it just doesn't never work, because if you look at a hardware, you cannot even close source it. As soon as it's released, you can look at it and you can see what components are there, how they're connected. So open sourcing it doesn't change a lot. Also, if you look closely, there are components that are going to stay closed source. So things like ASICs, MCUs, ESP32, display controllers, these are all closed source components inside BitAxe. Same for Antminers or any other miners. So I think I am not a fan of using this, you know, open source hardware and software terminology. I think, to me, it doesn't even make sense to call anything open source hardware, because hardware is not built by compiling source code. So we don't use it in our marketing metrics. We don't acknowledge it. We steer customers towards getting the highest hash rate at the lowest price.
You know, Marshall, you have been around a very long time as well, and have seen the hardware industry change frequently. You've recently been involved with selling these more open products, and, you know, have beef. Do you have anything to build off of what Avril was talking about, or, you know, what do you think is important for people to understand about the hardware landscape right now?
Sure, that's a good question. So first thing I want to point out is I got a lot of respect for the guys that started the BitAxe movement. I think it's a great idea. But along the same lines, for me, what I want, I've been in the game for a long time, I want the most amount of people that can have hash rate running in whatever capacity they can, right? So for me, the driving force is I want good products that aren't fire hazards. And one thing I want to really kind of put to bed is this whole like, oh, China bad. If you think China's bad, you haven't been to China in the past decade. Like, let me give you a good example. Apple Watch, that crystal on that Apple Watch cannot be manufactured in the States. We don't fucking know how. That can only be manufactured in China. That's just one example. The culture of Chinese engineering, by virtue of how they operate, people do more specialization, more deep technology. That's not saying every manufacturer in China is great. A lot of them are trash. However, and this is coming from us, we manufacture in Houston, we manufacture in Europe, and we manufacture in China. We run our own stuff, our own SMT. My partner who runs all the Chinese SMT is right here in the front row. If you want a tour of the place, go. Any SMT that you have it needs to be about quality, not location necessarily. I want to sell good products at a competitive rate that is more competitive. As far as do you open source it or not, this like open source license, here's the facts. A license is only as good as your ability to enforce it. Same thing with a patent, same thing with a trademark. If I have a patent, and I have several, if somebody infringes on it, the question is, do I want to pursue them to stop them from doing that? I had the legal basis to do that, but it costs money and maybe it's not worth the time. So just period for any US patent law, that's really the case. If you want to enforce a license, you have to do that, and that costs money. Now, that being said, what the open source guys did for BitX opened a whole new world. Credit where it's due. Outside of that, it's really about the technical advantages. I'll give you an example. So our stuff that we manufacture, we do power and serial. All the open source miners, they do power in parallel. I think the serial is a better design. It's a more complicated design. Takes more engineering to get that done. But my design is more robust, cooler, and cheaper because I don't have voltage regs all over the board. That's the first thing I would say is the design can be different. And the reason that I choose to encrypt my firmware is a competitive advantage. Because I think I have better firmware, I think I have a better design than other people, and I don't want my competitors to be able to knock it off. That being said, it's because our end goal is to get as much hash rate in the hands of as many people at the lowest cost of entry, period. So that the whole open source versus not, I don't really care. I want great products at the most competitive price so that I can compete. And therefore, I decide to lock my firmware down so other people can't take my IP because I don't want to pursue somebody over a market cap. The total addressable market is, I don't know, probably less than $50 million. It's not worth pursuing anybody over. So my only choice is to out-engineer people. Therefore, my costs can go down so I can compete better on pricing.
Cool. Just out of curiosity, can I see a show of hands from the audience of people that run BitXs at home? Cool. So I think the BitX has become a pretty big thing pretty quickly. A lot of people have them in their homes. One of the parts of the project that I've been the most excited about is people being excited about getting their hands on Bitcoin miners and just learning about the process, learning about the nuances of the hardware industry. It's a great educational process, not just from people running them, but from people manufacturing them. And I think that has been awesome to watch. Like seeing what Econo Alchemist is doing, I've gotten to see his whole setup with what he's building. But yeah, Juan Clue, do you have any responses to that? A huge part of the BitX is not just the physical hardware itself, but also the firmware which you've been involved with. But
Yeah, sure. I mean, one thing that is really important to us is definitely the fact that it is not negotiable that we do think, yes, there is a certain factor for companies to go out there and say, all right, I do have a product, I developed that on my own, it's going to be mine. I mean, how many of us are using iPhones or other products? None of that is open source. That's not the point. The point is that we go out there and we are having a society or even the financial system that we are trying, or at least we are evolving into Bitcoin. And just going out there and having a system that is so fundamentally different to the current fiat system doesn't, in my opinion, have the option to stay closed source. And a primary issue with that is that I do see the benefits of why companies want their devices to be closed down. It is there, it is the thing, and there's nothing against to say that. The biggest problem that is happening is that you see companies going out there and taking your stuff and making that closed source again, while going out there and claiming they have developed something on their own, yet you just need like 2 minutes to figure out that's not the case. Half of that is stolen. It is kind of wild. I mean, don't get me wrong. It is, at the one hand, it is totally fine because it proves what you did is fantastic. So others want to use that. So that is great. The only problem is I want to have a choice if I use my device. There are certain improvements when it comes to hardware on certain other devices. There are disadvantages on other devices than on others. So everything has pros and cons. But if I have the option and I can choose, I personally say I prefer open source. And the same also goes for the hardware. I do understand that it is not as easy as with software to make it open source, especially when you think about chipping them out, getting them through the entire system and making chips, especially ASICs. In the end of the day, it is code. Like an ASIC chip or an FPGA, if you want to build that, that's not just some fancy line drawing. No, you need to write a program to manufacture them. Then they go through these expensively machines and get way on a waiver and everything else. Way too complicated shit, but that is code. So technically, it could be possible to make something open source, yet we need to realize we are in a world where this will not happen. So I agree with you that you would say, all right, we will not see any open source hardware like an ASIC chip very soon. The same goes for the Proto that we do see from the Block company. They already said that they will open source the firmware, but for the hardware they can't. Not because they don't want to, maybe, but the primary factor is if you want to produce chips, if you want to produce components, hardware, you need to rely on other companies, and they have strict rules that forbid you of doing that. That all aside, I personally want to have the freedom, and I think it is hard to argue against user freedom.
What's your philosophy on this view?
I mean, it's pretty simple. I think that basically open source is just a way to build like good software. If you think about it, think about Bitcoin. We are here for that. You know, if Bitcoin was like closed source, it wouldn't exist, basically. But I mean, it's a good way to build good software and safe software and secure software. But I also see the point of building closed source software for making money. I mean, it does make sense, and you want to save some competitive advantage, I would say. So it makes sense. My only take on this is that this has been the case for the last 20, 30, 40 years, but now the world is changing. And so we have to say that, let's say, my vision on this is, if you want to build something that is going to last for the next 40 years, you build it open source. Because this is going to be like built in a proper way, and either it's software or whatever. If you want to build something that can let you make a lot of money, you build it closed source, maybe. But the point is that, especially for software, but I'm sure it's going to be the case also for hardware in the next years, is that with AI right now, intelligence is commoditized. So we are not talking about closed or open. You build a proprietary tool with a good feature, you can just copy it. You can just reverse engineering easily and make it. So, SaaS is that every single thing you think to build to get a competitive advantage in terms of knowledge, it's not a competitive advantage because it's going to be copied. So I think that's the case for software, for sure. So making like SaaS and make your competition on the last feature doesn't make any sense anymore. But I think it's going to be the same for hardware. Maybe not now, because hardware is still connected to something physical. So you can, as you said, Aviral, it's not about the composition of the components in the hardware, but it's about the component itself. So let's say in a miner you see the ASIC, and how can you reverse engineering the ASIC? You can try to. It's a bit complicated. I'm sure it's going to be easier and easier in the future, but then you need like the hardware to manufacture it. So again, I'm sure that in the future it's going to be easier. So far it's not, but my take on this right now is just that we don't need to have like open source ASICs now, but the most important thing for me is just to separate the idea of a miner and an ASIC. So the ASIC is the chip and the miner is what you build around. So I love, for example, the hash rate, the heat pumps movement. They're building like boilers, you know, using ASICs. They're building like solar panels using ASICs. I love that kind of solutions. So I don't think we need like right now open source ASICs. I just think that opening more the environment will create a lot of new use cases that are going to be very, very useful for the Bitcoin network. So again, just to summarize it, I really think that right now we have these closed versus open environment. In the future, again, intelligence is going to be commoditized, so everything is going to be open to everybody. So yeah, that's my take.
Definitely. I mean, this conversation isn't recently contentious. It's been one for a long time. You know, the firmware developers love to argue with each other and point fingers. You know, a lot of people have used CG Miner in one way or another, and that's been controversial. You know, Avril, what's your take on this? What do you think the optimal, like, ethical way to just interact with the products that people are building is, and to build products yourself?
Phrase that question.
Like, do you think there's an optimal ethical way to build products, you know, hardware, firmware in general? You know, some people will say it's unethical to take somebody's open source work and then roll it into your own closed source and claim that it's yours.
Sure. So I think it all depends on the license. CG Miner was MIC license, if I remember correctly, and I think what many companies did with it was illegal, but they probably never got sued. Many of them were based in China. I'll read again. So yeah, I think CG Miner, what happened with it was probably illegal according to the license it was released under, but I don't think they ever got sued. Coming back to hardware, I think it's a completely different story with hardware, right? Like what OSMU has, I mean, I will congratulate them that they probably allowed 100,000 plus miners to get their first miner. But I think the innovation there was ESP32 integration with the ASIC itself, which lowered the cost of controller by an order of magnitude. Not the open source part of ESP miner, right? That's kind of what I would contend. I think going back to history of this, see, the ethics are related to the licensing that you attach to the product. But going back to the history of this, I see a lot of people promoting, you know, FOSS or GTFO or demand open source. What that means for the hardware developers is they are being pushed into thinking that this is the Bitcoin way. You should just open source all your work, right? Spend hours and hours and hours and just give it all away. But this approach has actually almost never worked. If you look around, there is no real successful open source hardware. You know, not your phone, not your watch, not your car, not your fridge, not this microphone. It's been tried many, many times. Look at MakerBot, look at Prusa for 3D printers. It fails every single time. Either these companies pivot to closed source or they just go out of business. So I think to demand, you know, FOSS or GTFO idea is sending developers down the wrong path of ruin. Instead of going straight to the market by making proprietary products, they're now forced to go to a foundation for a donation for their work to support themselves. And, you know, you're welcome to try it again. I think this idea doesn't work, and it's just gonna lead to wasted effort. The foundation themselves are open to political capture or, you know, ideological suicide. We've seen these with 501c3s over and over. I mean, we just saw this with Electronic Frontier Foundation, Wikimedia Foundation, right? Highly censored. Like it just keeps happening. SPLC. So I think depending on to say that we're there to destroy the proprietary mining empire, but then lobby to their own foundations to fund your open source work, I think that's hypocrisy, and it's gonna be a dead end no matter what.
Maybe just a quick response to that. There is a really important difference to make between Open Source Miners United as like this community, and I know that there has been a lot of debate going around between the donation that has been received and small entity that is its own company, which has claimed to receive that, but yet refunded all of that. It's a small entity. Ben.
I wasn't talking about.
Unfortunately, I mean, this is a very nuanced, complicated topic that we could probably talk about for, I don't know, what do you think, like 24 hours straight, if we could? Marshall, I just want to give you a chance. We got a minute and a half left to respond to anything that you want to share.
Yeah, look, I'm a capitalist, okay? So if you want to buy open source, whatever, buy it. My goal is to build something that's better than what you can buy and to also protect my competitive edge. But that doesn't mean that you can't go buy something that might be more expensive because you want to tinker on it. Look, there's a market. That's fine. That's not my goal. My goal is to get as much hash rate in as many hands as possible. I don't care about anything else. So at the end of the day, if you think that it's important for you to be able to tinker or tune or contribute to a project, look, Bitcoin Core has had its own fair share of problems, right? Like, it's not a business model. It's impossibly hard to, I mean, OneClue's done a lot of great work, but I mean, it's thankless work at the end of the day. It's really hard to get paid to do that. And you're reliant on other people's ability to donate. When the weather's good, it's fine. When the weather's not good, it's tough, which means all the smart people have a high tendency to get washed out, to Avril's point. So that my goal is to provide as many people a low entry point. I don't care about anything else. Bitcoin's changed my life, changed everybody's life on this stage. And I think what's most important is to try to drive decentralization through low barrier to entry with hardware. I don't care about anything else.
Well, very cool. That's it. We gotta wrap up, but I think we'll all be around this week if you want to talk to any of us, keep the conversation going. But all of these guys on this panel, incredibly knowledgeable. Thank you guys for being on it. Let's give them a big round of applause.
Yeah, let's hear it. Keep it going. As you can tell, this is a far more nuanced subject than you might think of at first. We have open source, yeah, that's for everybody, but man, it costs a lot to sue somebody, doesn't it? So we have to think about these things, and that's why we have this conversation. That's why we have this opportunity in order to bring people together and have difficult conversations. Our next conversation here is about what happens in the post-subsidy world. This has always been one of the biggest